Don't take it, don't. Don't take it, don't. Don't take it, don't. Don't take it, don't.
Welcome, everybody. I am Kira Epstein, the program coordinator at the New School at Commonweal. It is an auspicious day, and it's an auspicious time, according to our astrologists who have determined the appropriate time and date for us to have this conversation. So we are welcoming Caroline Casey, Rachel Lang, and our host, Michael Lerner. We are recording this conversation, and we will have produced audio and video files available. You can find all of our recordings on the New School's website, and they're also on SoundCloud, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and on Spotify. This conversation is part of a series on astrology and archetypal psychology. We have quite a few other event recordings on this topic that you can watch or listen to. I also hope you take a look at our other offerings coming up this summer and fall on our website, which is tns.commonweal.org. So thank you all for being with us. Caroline Casey, Rachel Lang, and Michael Lerner, thank you for being with us at the New School at Commonweal.
Thank you so much, Kira, and welcome to all of you who are joining us. This is a very special event to have our beloved friend and longtime Commonweal colleague, Caroline Casey, with us again. She's been to Commonweal many times as a keynote speaker at our fall gatherings and is a close friend of quite a few of us there. I'll introduce my dear friend Rachel Lang first. Rachel is the one who got me into this whole exploration of astrology with a reading she did for me that just made me want to go further. She's a professional astrologer, psychic medium, and author of Modern Day Magic, 8 Simple Rules to Realize Your Power and Shape Your Life. And she teaches all kinds of courses. You can look up her bio at the New School, and is just a very distinguished young member of the high-level astrology community, and I'm honored that she's been guiding me in astrology. Caroline Casey, for many of you, truly needs no introduction, although Rachel told me Caroline was a big part of how she got into astrology. She is a visionary activist astrologer devoted to the principle that imagination lays the tracks for the reality train to follow. So the cultivation of imagination coupled with the capacity for complex storytelling is a key strategy for personal and collective change. She has studied astrology since she was a teenager and has many, many other qualifications. The Visionary Activist Show, Wedding Spiritual Magic to Ingenious Social Action, has been on Pacifica in Northern California and is replayed in LA. And she offers visionary activist revivals at many places around the country and I guess around the world. So with that, Rachel and Caroline, welcome to the New School. Welcome all.
Thank you. Thank you. And let me do what we did backstage, which is to greet Rachel, because she is a Libran like me and born in the year of the dragon like me. So we go, welcome, fellow Libran dragon. That's right. And the year of the sheep, the Good Samaritan, Michael. All right. And it is always useful. What? Right. What does Ursula Le Guin say? Ursula Le Guin says, those who do not listen to dragons are doomed to live out the nightmares of politicians. So we have a dragon conversation going. And, that's great. I'm a large part of why Rachel got into astrology. When people usually ask me, how'd you get into astrology? I go, drugs. And that's sort of true. It's the entheogens that rescued me as a teenager in Andy Weil's salon, responsible entheogenic use, from teenage nihilism, like, oh, religion's a crutch and everything. Oh, wait, patterns, beautiful patterns. And it was in that context that astrology was spoken about, as, ritual magic, social change, everything I'm interested in. And at that time, even before I kind of knew the language, I'm like, this'll do. It's no matter how much we study, there's always more, and it is this beautiful conversational language. So let me kind of open it up. Conversing, the word itself, converse, con, with, verse, turning. A conversation is a turning together. And this beautiful language is a conversational language that says conversing, but we live in a conversational creation in which everything's speaking to us all the time by shape and color and song and rhythm. And if we just approach the world with informed, reverent curiosity, we'd be back in the conversation, and the dance. And yeah, so we did choose this time because the world's on fire, and what are we going to do? And cooperators are standing by. And let me just introduce a little bit of the conversing, and then we can maybe to and fro, but including everybody. There's 104 people online now, and more coming. So all part of this turning together to gather, and so I love astrology really as the first endogenous language of participatory kinship. And the word endogenous is such a wonderful thing. It comes to us from entheogens. We have endogenous receptors for cannabis, and I like to say we have endogenous receptors for myth and astrology. So regardless of how much or little our attendee participants know, when we speak the words, there's parts of us that go, yes, hello, there we go. So we want to speak to the conversational, participatory part of everybody. And then just a little frame, why I'm so enthused about gathering now, because the backstage deities are eager for us to cahoot. So it's just past the full moon, the sun in Cancer overhead, right next to Ceres Demeter, dwarf planet, goddess of the earth. We work for her. Right next to Mercury, intelligence of conversation. We'll come back there. Opposite Moon and Pluto. Dum, dum, da, dum. So I like Gustavo Petro, who is recently the president-elect of Colombia, said, it's no longer left and right, but life and death. I go, that's good. And I love Pluto is where it was when this country was founded. Right now, right, July 4th, 1776, Pluto was at 27 degrees of Capricorn. It's taken it this long for it to return. So it's a powerful moment. And so I do, the thing I sent out to many people is I do love the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once that I just saw. It's streaming, but the title is fabulous. Everything Everywhere All at Once. It's very trippy. It's very trippy. But I think that addresses the Pluto return in this country. Everything Everywhere All at Once, that Pluto says to dredge deeply, to look at everything, all of the corruption and the betrayal, as to excavate archaeologically back to the original liberating impulse, to resurrect democracy, right? And Rachel and I are, I'm sure, telepathically in cahoots. Well, your sun is my Saturn.
I know.
Right?
I know.
And so that's adorable, which is at the Robin Hood degree, steal from the rich, give to the poor, which is wonderful. And then just in honor of your chart, because we want to bring everybody into play, I do love that your rising sign, 15 Gemini, is woman gives rousing speech on behalf of the earth. We go, thank you very much. That's really great. And then just also, oh no, it's never mind. At first I did your chart for October 11th, 1076. I'm like, what a great chart. Oh wait, no,
that's a different lifetime.
Different, yeah. It looked good, but you carry it all with you. So just a little bit about why the backstage divine is eager for us to converse. So here's Ceres, goddess of the earth. We work for her. Life or death, sun, Mercury in Cancer. Let our words be full of feeling. And Mercury has a sextile, a collaborative 60-degree angle to Uranus, one of my favorite beings, trickster genius in Taurus, the realm of biomimicry and participatory animism. And Uranus is stationing now It's arrived at its stationing degree where it's spending a long time. I've been really looking forward to it as a summer companion. Its image is a new continent arising up out of the ocean, rebirth after crisis. And it's like, thank you, thank you. Jupiter also stationing at its degree, which is a crystal gazer. So we're being invited to see the desirable story, to be fully aware of the danger as incentive, but to have that dedication to coming back to the desirable story. And may it be all of us engaging in public discourse or private conversation. It's all one giant turning together, because the news people, there's such black magic, going, oh, Biden's so tired and blah, blah, blah. Magic is a willingness to cooperate with everything. And part of what this beautiful language bestows upon us is everybody, has all of these living intelligences in them, a Mercury, a Saturn, a Uranus. And whatever we speak to in another is the part of them we're inviting to dance, which is why our etiquette is we don't want to be judgy. We want to be discerning and diagnostic, right? But not judgy, because when we're judgy, imprisoning, we're inviting the imprisoned, not very interesting part of ourselves to dance with the imprisoned. No, it's never a good idea. So, and then I want to, as we go into politics, mythology, spirituality, that tolerance, that all of us are comprised of many parts. And in dealing with so many, progressives, I have the Pluto cauldron beside me so we can throw things into the cauldron, because I'm sure this isn't true of anybody here, right? But there is a progressive, in quotes, response to many things, which is kind of nya, right? And we go, I want to throw nya into the cauldron. People go, oh, Biden, nya. And it's like, it's an assignment to work with this guy. His sun is 27 degrees Scorpio. He's born the same day as the Gettysburg Address, that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. And we go, right. And he's a king of the fairies. There's an augury part of him, right? And yes, we can go, right, the drilling and the thing and the whatever, but nonetheless, we're assigned everything as a dance partner, even or especially the virus, right? How do we, Uranus in Taurus reminds us that, when will the pandemic end? It will end when the conditions that gave rise to it are addressed. And the conditions that gave rise to it are humans despoiling the earth. Mm-hmm. So we're going to have these viral storms, right, as dance partners, cooperative partners, dangerous allies in some way. And then just the last little bits I want to put on and then toss it to Rachel and Michael to and fro. But Mercury overhead, there's so many blessings being bestowed on us going, we can do this. So Mercury sextiles Uranus, biomimicry, Uranus in Taurus for a few more years. I think it's 4. This I view as super crucial for all of us to make alliances with what we love in nature, to be its agent in the human cultural world. And Mercury squares Chiron, little planetoid mentor, centaur mentor. And I do love, in keeping with the Cancerian realm, it says history is the womb of time. So history, that my friend Deborah Felmuth says, in the West, we think of the future in front of us, in the past in back of us. Who cares? And Deborah, who lives in Syria and Vermont, says in the Middle East, it's the reverse. And it's fun to do this. She says, we're gazing at the past in front of us. Just kind of try the perspective here. The future's invisible, but we're crafting the future by gazing at the caravan of our past mentors. Mm-hmm. And we go, oh, I love that. So for all of us to think of who are our mentors, human, rock, plant, animal, astrological mentors, all of that. And then Mercury is part of this beautiful thing that is such a blessing to us. Mercury quintiles, 72-degree angle to Mars in Taurus. The animal spirits are present. Mars quintiles Saturn. Saturn biquintiles, 144-degree angle back to Mercury. It's very beautiful. So a quintile is a 72-degree angle. What we get when we divide the circle by 5. 5 is sacred to Venus. And it's one of the first things I learned as a little occult student in London at the Astrological Lodge on Baker Street. So I learned it as literary, but it's available to all of us in many, many forms. We learned it as irresistible eloquence. And the reason I love it so much is that it's a capacity for all of us, available now for download, to hold a true perception, and to be like a tuning fork in that it hums in others. Part of the conversing, so we don't have to convince anybody. It would be as though people said, oh, Rachel, since you said that thing about my chart, or since you did that, I see that now, right? So it's really clean, guiding people to their own autonomy. And I love my decades-long ally, Sylvia Scully, said, Caroline, the quintile is all that you say, but it's also the capacity to open portals between worlds. I'm like, oh, now we're talking. And if it's not true, let's make it true, right? So Mercury to Mars in Taurus, as the animistic spirits are available, Mars's image, metaphors for each degree of the zodiac, is a cantilever bridge over a rocky gorge, doing impossible things, getting from there to here. And we go, all right, there's a lot of conundrums on our table. And it's very much like High John the Conqueror, the trickster folk hero of the South. We got to find a way out of no way and hit a straight lick with a crooked stick. And that's where Uranus and Jupiter, the two biggest path openers stationing, are here to help us out, for all of us to give to our inner democracy comprised of all these planets the work it does best. And I think Saturn is in some ways least understood. Saturn's the part of all of us that defines things, takes vows, dedicates. But Saturn's really terrible at, well, how are we going to do that? The world is impossible. And we go, no. Shh. Saturn, your job is what, not how. When we give how to Saturn, it's like, oh, no. It's like, no. Saturn's job is what. Jupiter and Uranus chime in, especially now for everybody here, and say, we'll do how. We'll do how in a way that makes you bark with laughter. Do common sense things as they occur, because that's magic too, and stewardship, but not to let the compelling illusion of realism be an imaginative impediment.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And I know Rachel well enough to know that she's been listening to this with many feelings. So Rachel, take it away for a bit here. What does this evoke for you?
Well, I just have some yes ands. And there are some aspects of this astro-mythological story that I'd like to bring in too. And one of them is Eris.
Oh, yeah.
Eris is at the 25th degree of Aries. And she's standing in a T-square between the midpoint of the moon and Pluto and Ceres. And she's close to the sun too. And so I always think of any planet at that apex of the T-square being like like a slingshot, like where the energy is ripe for activity and for motion and for where we want to release. We want some kind of letting go. And with Eris, it's like we don't always, Eris is the goddess of discord, but I like to think of her as the goddess of disruption for progressive change.
Yes.
And so it's not discord where there doesn't need to be discord. It is stirring the cauldron, so to speak, and raising up, bubbling up whatever needs to be transformed. And Eris is the transformative energy that allows us to catalyze change. And sometimes in ways that feel a little surprising to others, sometimes in ways that feel invigorating and courageous. And so I love the way that Eris has been involved in the Pluto story for the last 2 years. Eris and Pluto have been challenging one another. Now that Pluto's retrograde, they're going back into that standoff. And so I sort of see Eris as being a really big player in this lunation and in this astrological story. And then one other thing that I'm noticing and becoming aware of as you're talking, Carolyn, because I'm looking at the chart for right now. One other thing I'm noticing is that Black Moon Lilith is in a septile, which is in a 90-degree aspect with Uranus, with stationing Uranus. And Black Moon Lilith, I've been, since the Cancer new moon, I have been meditating to Lilith. I've been reading, I've been really just absorbed in Lilith mythology. And one of the things that that interests me about this particular, a septile is sort of like an aha, like an otherworldly, it's really the working of magic, the forces, the supernatural forces that compel transformation, that compel change. And so I'm looking at Lilith and Uranus and thinking that that our conversation, I think this conversation today can be in some ways a conjuring of that vision, of a vision of the little sparks of insight that can spark vision for anyone listening to this, or for us, for how we deepen our relationship, how we really get back into a oneness with the earth, because that's the energy of Lilith. Lilith is the wildness inside of us that refuses to be tamed, and that understands that only by working in a wondrous relationship with all life, with this material reality within our bodies, not having some disassociated spirituality, that only by really embodying spirit in this physical world, that's really what we're called to do. That's why we have these experiences, why we're here, why we've incarnated. And so Lilith opens us up for understanding that for feeling on a mystical level, on a physiological level, that connection with the earth. And then Uranus sparking the courage that creates the pathway for change, and change that aligns to purpose, because it's conjunct the North Node, which is that point that we're all moving toward. And I'm noticing this is a big theme in my practice right now, is that everyone it's like the road's clearing, I know, Carolyn, like you've probably done open the road rituals, or lit, like created, like done candles or for opening the road. Like Uranus conjunct North Node opens the road. It's like whatever has been standing as an obstacle or a hurdle, clearing it away. And so I just wanted to add those things to everything that Carolyn was saying.
Caroline, coming back to you, there's this wide perception that democracy is in peril in the United States, that we are at a turning point. You've both referenced the Pluto return. You have an unusual capacity, Caroline, and to go to conservative conferences and play with the conservatives in really interesting ways, not getting them to think, getting them to open their minds. But when you talked about that in the past at Commonweal, we weren't in quite as polarized a place as we are now. Caroline, when you see how polarized we are now, do you find that the way you were able to play with, let's say, more mainstream conservatives in the pre-Trump era is compromised or changed? Are you able to hold creative dialogue with the people who say that they are representing the Republican Party now?
Well, first, for fun, conversational, liberating language, I like, just as a aspiration, that whenever we say something that's true but undesirable, we park it in the past. It has been true that we have been polarized, but now is a huge opportunity. Mm-hmm. And I think the hearings are a consummate art form, a confluence of mythological, historical, and dedication, and then just as a little, again, referring back to Rachel bringing in Eris, right? So to introduce further, so Eris is a planet way out in the Kuiper Belt beyond Pluto, right? So a little abstract, But as we know, anything for which we have a name, we have a relationship, right? And she's in Aries for all of us because she's got a 500-year orbit. But she is arrived at 25, whose image is woman bursting with gifts more than she can hold, right? It's actually Pacifica's son when it was born. We go, right, disruptive in this going, we have so many gifts. So I think it is, we polish off all of our skills to converse across borders, and then with our wizard and witchcraft brooms, we dissolve the borders after we cross them, going there. We're all in this thing together. So that's why it's so useful to gather now in the Cancerian realm. And I always like to bring up Brer Rabbit, right? The Cancer gathering. There was times when all the critters used to gather to sagactuate, just like there ain't been no hard times, like there ain't been no falling out, like they all remembered they were kin, right? So with that in mind, I do dust off my skills about talking to right-wing nut jobs, excuse me, and to find the common story.
Example. You used to give us examples of your talks with right-wing nut jobs. Give us an example of an exchange between you and a right-wing nut job.
Well, two things. I've used them, but I carry them in my pocket, right? So some of you might have heard them, but I'm new to many of you, so here we go. So, but I think we can tease, and all of us can put things in our magic backpacks to take away. So I was at CPAC, not the former guys, because that was too much, right? And we do want to bring in the wrathful dakinis as part of the Moon Pluto thing, who metabolize poison, right? But before that, at CPAC, and friends of mine said, let's smuggle you into the Reagan banquet. And I'm like, well, okay. And I always look like I look, except I think I was wearing wolf pendants and things. And this guy comes up and goes, wolves. And I gave him the rap on wolf model of leadership. And he's like, oh, I used to read mythology, but I can't talk about it with, so, here, would you be my date at the Reagan banquet? I'm like, you bet. Okay, there we go. Okay. So he goes, I own one of the largest privately owned boats in the world. And I go, you must love the ocean. And he's like, I do. And I go, anyway, so off we go. The other one, whatever we speak to another, and then it turns out, because he took a picture, and he's CEO of Petroleum Inc., right? So anyway, so the conversation was opened over there. But the other one that you're referring to is, I think, useful for all of us. So I saw these Ayn Rand Austrian economists, kind of up to no good, and I felt contempt, right? So there is no communication, no conversation when we have contempt. So I pulled out my imaginary Hermfitude composter, right? And at that point, they were like, who are you? And I said, I'm Coyote Network News. I'm a mythological news service for the trickster redeemer within us all. And they said, oh, that is so cool. If I'd said I'm an environmentalist or a feminist or an astrologer, any of those things, right? Unexpected language liberates everybody, right?
Well, that's the point that I just like to make about astrology and archetypal psychology, is that it really does speak across the political spectrum, and in fact, there are a lot of conservatives who can understand those arguments sometimes even better than progressives. The same is true with integrative medicine, with integrative health. That crosses all the political spectrum. So that capacity that you have to dance with, as you've been demonstrating, to dance with people across the political spectrum seems to me a really powerful magic for this period of time.
And then just one more I do want to bring up, and then we'll toss it around. But because I think it's before our whole conversational council here. So I was going to these, Committee for the Republic, comprised of, Republicans and judges and left wing, everybody. And my friend who got me into it said, that person's the most conservative person in the room. Go talk to him. So I go, hello. And he says, well, what do you know about Edmund Burke? And I go, not much. And he said, well, this conversation about big government, small government's irrelevant. Edmund Burke said, the more we cultivate inner Saturn, he didn't say Saturn, but inner Saturn, what is it to be a good citizen, the fewer outer Saturn rules or regulations we need. And I go, yes, I said, this is astrology. This is Taoism. And he goes, I love Taoism. I haven't been able to talk about it with any of my conservative friends. But I just want to put this on our work table because we're really defining Saturn. What is it to be a good citizen of a democracy? What is it to be a good citizen of the earth, right? And in defining things, whenever things are polarized, to rather than complicitously feed that opposition, to ask people, what's your definition of good governance? Well, one, it disrupts the thing, and it throws the Saturn going, oh, and then I can prime the pump. The purpose of government is to protect the Commonwealth. Anyway, but so that's, I think, a useful thing. But good citizenship, the more we cultivate that, which is very much before us, the fewer outer laws we need. Corporations need that, so that's the thing. And then the last little thing from CPAC was, I run into a guy and he's like, no EPA, no regulation, no, because I want to play the games that I want to play. And I go, well, that's interesting because the essence of games is rules. In fact, on this planet, there's some limits, some Saturn limits. There's only so much water. That's it. That's it. The Cleopatra's bathwater is raining down on us now. And he's like, oh, I didn't know that. I guess I should rethink my, what did you call it, metaphor. I'm like, yes, go do that. Anyway, so woof want to play, I think, is part of our conversational setting. And if somebody doesn't, we keep moving, right? So a playful engagement, which is very available. So yeah.
Wonderful. Rachel, again, I want to know, Rachel, can we break your big news about what you're going to do in politics on this very webinar?
Well, I had a chart, an announcement chart all elected.
Oh, okay.
But we'll do it. We'll do it. I'm so nervous. I'm running for city council.
Oh, goody. Oh, good.
In Ojai.
Yeah.
With the blessing and support of the mayor.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's
in Ojai?
That here, Rachel, as an astrologer, as a mystic, a medium, is going to get out there and run for city council in order to move progressive change in Ojai, California, which, as you know, Caroline, Ojai has quite a history. So, for Rachel to do that there is really extraordinary. And I'm just so hopeful that you will bring fresh energy to it. So as you listen to what Caroline has been saying, what comes up now for you? What does that evoke?
A couple of things. And first, I want to just talk about running. I've always felt like, I've always been at the intersection my entire career of astromythology, social justice, and art. And I started to really think about, what I could do. And I've always thought, had that saying in the back of my mind, think global, act local. And here's an opportunity to really implement a lot of the way that I see things moving. If we can envision a post-patriarchal, post-white supremacist world, it's one that would likely run on consensus, to where we'd be breaking out of this binary thinking of this polarized paradigm that we've been living in since, the 3rd or 4th century BCE. And so one of the things I've been watching over my career, really, as I've been thinking about the astrology of how these shifts are going to take place, looking at Pluto moving into Aquarius, thinking about the Aquarius age and what does that mean. Also, I've read a lot of theosophical literature, so I know that there's another race of humankind that's going to be born, and there's a lot of there are. I think it was Helena Blavatsky, Madame Blavatsky, who talked about having a gender neutral culture. And I know some of her ideas aren't really fitting into what we know of to be true right now at this time. But I think that what we've seen with our transgender friends and with that movement in really taking, like, unpacking gender binaries and gender constructs, what we've seen in that movement, I think, can be a template for us to follow in looking at how do we move out of polarity in politics. I watch our own local committees like not reaching decisions, or people coming in at fighting with one another. And I think there's got to be, we're giving birth to a new paradigm. We're giving birth to a new earth. And there are other ways to do things rather than fighting it out. And I'm one too who's been at Republican national conventions. Like I actually had an interview with Entertainment Tonight at the Reagan Library during the Republican debate, the primary debate, and and they kind of wanted to make fun of it. They were like, "What's an astrologer doing here?" And I said, Ronald Reagan didn't make a single move without Nancy consulting their astrologer. And so I'm also one of, like Carolyn, actually, you've been a really big influence in my work and in my life. Thank you. You're Saturn on my sun. And one of the things that I've really taken from listening to your podcast for years and years and years, and from, reading your work and all of those things, one thing that you've really taught me is that whenever we have an opposition, that when there's two, we need a third.
Right.
And I've really lived so much of my life by that. And that's sort of why I'm running.
Somebody's asking, can you share your website so they can donate? And I don't.
It's not up yet because I haven't officially announced my candidacy.
Right. No.
It'll be up.
Right. You tricked her off of her formal thing. So this isn't the formal thing. This is the backstage with 200 friends who are supportive. Yeah. But that's so great in Ojai because it's wonderful history and all. And do you know the dancer Banafshe who lives there?
No, I don't.
Oh, I will introduce you. One of the best Middle Eastern dance teachers in the world lives in Ojai, all about undulating and inviting in magic and all of those things. So everything's a dance partner. So there's that. And then Ojai is where, Nina Simons, got a bunch of money and flew women that she thought should meet to Ojai. And this was in... just after right before the Iraq War, and that was the founding of the Council of Unreasonable Women. So Ojai is the birthplace of the Council of Unreasonable Women, out of which many things came. Congressman Pramila Jayapal was in that. Code Pink came out of that. Diane Wilson, Indefatigable. So it's got women's mojo in Ojai. Just blah 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 blah. So that's great. Connecting with the land, so wonderful. What a absolutely participatory. Yeah. Because, that's super great. And then, and in the political realm, right. So I am wildly enthused about the hearings. I think the hearings are a powerful, really well done public ritual. And before that, I'm like, will it be good? Will Benny Thompson, the chairman, be charismatic enough? Whatever. And it's like, never mind all that. Behind Benny Thompson really was Obatala, positive Saturn. We are tracking things. Like, where do we see these principles? Where is positive Saturn, wise leadership? And it's like, never mind charisma. He's got solemnity and dignity and competence. And it's like, whoa. So we see... the mythic power of Saturn, behind him. And then for all of us, we see all these people who have done terrible, terrible, corrupt things, but are being okay now, right? So, it's yesterday's especially, and Liz Cheney, a crime family, but she's stepping up, and for us to see that, it's like the movie 7 Days in May, where the corruption gets so strong that the bad guys go, oh, now it's too far. And that's what I mean, Michael, about it has been polarity, but now come on over. Alan Watts says, no sense clinging to the rocks that are falling with you, right? Come on over here to the desirable thing. Come on over here to the better story that invites everybody's, disobedient, imaginative genius. We've got things to do. We can't afford the unimaginative default setting of war and strife to distract us from our necessity of healing our relationship to the earth, right? And so glad that you're bringing all this into active political participation. Yes, good for you.
Caroline, I want to ask you the question that I've wrestled with Rachel for some time, which is, I totally get astrology as an incredible archetypal language. The way Carl Jung got it, and Carl Jung and your friend James Hillman, they were both extraordinarily dedicated astrologers. Hillman's son is also a dedicated astrologer. So I get the inner language of astrology, and I get, even if all assignments of birth date and everything else were random, even if, when you're told this is your destiny, and what happens is these incredibly powerful archetypal memes that have been, honed for thousands of years are given to you in a pattern, and you're told this is your life. And so just as you said that there are receptors for cannabis and, receptors for archetypes, they light up your life and you say, oh, aha, yes, this makes perfect sense to me. I am this. And it puts you in a relationship with your archetypes, which you can explore. So I've been developing this idea of astrology for non-believers, which is completely about the inner planets, that doesn't require you to believe a single thing, and not a single thing. But we did, as you know, a conversation with Rick Tornes about his Cosmos and Psyche book. And the extraordinary thing about that is you cannot explain Cosmos and Psyche on the basis of purely internal planets. Either this is an unbelievable exercise by a genius in confirmation bias that he set out and found all these amazing relationships between history and astrology just by cherry picking things, or it's actually happening. Now, if it's actually happening, either in individual lives or in history, I do not understand how it works. And
excellent.
So, yeah.
You're not meant to understand how it works, right?
That's the point is, how do you understand how it works?
Well, first, for fun, because I have my harumpitude cauldron here to throw into which to throw the word wrestled. Because so many people, I've been wrestling with this issue. I go, what does it feel like if you replace the word wrestle with dancing? I've been dancing with this question, because then we got some movement. The question is your dance partner. Whatever we say, we got more. He wants more wrestling. No, we want more dancing, right? I feel the same way about the word archetype. That's my thing. I throw it into the cauldron because it's an old word, but it's really a word that Jung used to smuggle living qualities of intelligence into academia. Nothing to worry about here. It's just an archetype, right? Mm-hmm. As opposed to, there is like with the orishas, the intelligences, they're real. Inner and outer are real. So Jung was asked the question you just asked, and he in a letter, and he said, well, there's different theories, but as my friend Steve Behrman quips, sure, it works in practice, but does it work in theory? Right? Oh. So Jung said there's a physicist, an astrophysicist at Princeton, George Noel, who says, well, there is light that comes from the stars and the thing and the time of year we're born and whatever, and it goes into our brain, our pineal, And then Jung said, and there's also just the synchronicity that everything's in conversation, inner, outer. It's not just inner. And he said, so it's probably both. Nature is never as tidy as we would have it, right? It's probably both. But you said astrology for non-believers. Well, that would be all of us. Believe nothing, entertain possibilities. And we know we're in delusion fest as well. Venus square Neptune. And so I've been pondering, why has the delusion, the toxic delusion, the QAnon thing, so, like a virus infected the yoga astrology communities. It's very trippy. Right? And Bali apparently has completely gone QAnon. And it's like, dogma. Anytime people believe something that they haven't earned, they're open to delusion virus, because it's part of that is compensatory condescension. Now I know and you don't, right? And so I think for all of us also to go backstage, this is something I've been playing with, which is everything back to nature. So the virus is a marvel of symmetry, right? It locks right in. And so is cobra venom. And cobra venom is a marvel of symmetry. It locks right into mammalian breathing. But honey badgers and possums have evolved, here comes Neptune, to shapeshift so that the cobra venom no longer fits their receptors, right? And I think this is a useful thing for us to imagine backstage, that the collective mind of this country and the world is shape-shifting its receptors so the delusion virus, the tyranny virus, the cruelty virus no longer fits, right? So people would go, wait a minute, where is tyranny? I know I put it somewhere. It's like, it's gone. It's gone. I think it's mad whimsy and experimentation, that this language is not to be believed in. It's to be entertained, the possibilities. And exactly what you said, when I start off, I go, magic, astrology, all that we love and that we share a great deal of. Either it's true, in which case it's the only way to live, or it's not true, in which case it's still the only way to live. Live the desirable story and then see what happens. Because if we stop going, I'm not going any further until I know how, we go, how is a booby prize, right? And that's also negotiating across borders, which is to start with what? The desirable vision, right? The sun is opposite the moon and Pluto, but trines Neptune. Everything into the cauldron going, here's a vision. Do you like that vision? Yes. Start with the vision, then avenues of synchronous opportunity open up to make it possible. Whereas if we start with what's realistic, we all go to war, right? So that's part of the thing. But this is your destiny. So I hope I don't know any astrologers who say that. Here's your destiny, right? And I go back to a mentor, Marsilio Ficino, who was always berating the astrologers of Venice for creating a priesthood, right? May I buy real estate? Yes, you may. And he goes, no, that's not what it's for. Right, and he brought in, talismanic magic, and it's all cooperating. So,
Marsilio Ficino, for those who are not familiar, I wasn't for a long time, was really the Plato of the Renaissance. He was employed by the Medici, and he sort of carried the Platonic ideal. When Rick Turner speaks, he speaks of the lineage from Plato to Ficino to Jung. And so this is the lineage of the inner planets and their power. And I love your suggestion that we do away with the idea of archetypes, which I've been very attached to, but I'll throw them into the cauldron.
Well, no, that's just me. No, don't do anything I say. You keep archetype if you love it.
Woof, I'm playing with you. But give me a language that one could use as a useful word or phrase. You talked about they are active intelligences. I totally get that. But is that the word? In other words, how could one have, or do you have a word or a phrase to substitute for archetypes other than active intelligences?
Right. Well, I think for all of us, Venus and Gemini doing many cool things, just as let's prime the pump. The more words we have, the more forms of participation. And that's really, again, astrology really wants to make all of our skills available to us, and they're all participatory. So the more metaphors, the more words, the more. So priming the pump. So there might, for convenience, people do default into one word, the polycrisis, the thing. And I go, every now and then it's good to disrupt that, or throw it into Pluto's cauldron, and then ladle it out. It only does things good to be bubbled away, so that we choose it. And Uranus chimes in and says, we are big gods dancing with you all. We don't care what you do. We care the manner in which you do it, that it comes from freedom and choice. I could use the word archetype, I could use the word intelligence, or I could use the word, rutabaga. But I choose to use the word archetype out of many possibilities. So intelligence is God's, but that's where the mythos kind of comes in, and metaphor means etymologically to carry across. Metaphor is the incarnational garb whereby power enters the world, and it's rooting for us. It's in group mind. It's got all these good angles to the thing. And then I just want to speak up on behalf of Pluto's dark humor, right? Pluto as a buddy as well, even though it's challenging to say the Lord of Death is a buddy. I think Pluto's noir is that whatever words we use to describe ourselves at any time, Pluto goes, good cover. Good cover. Even like I'm an astrologer running for the city council and I'm doing all these things and I'm connected to Helen Blavatsky, and Pluto goes, good cover. Or I'm Michael Lerner, I convene Commonweal, and they go, good cover. Or I'm a, good cover. And for all of us, because Pluto would say we're all undercover agents for, collective transformation or whatever fresh words we want to use. I mean, that's why we're conversing, to have more words. So it's many different cultures, right? There's the Orishas, there's the intelligences, there's the mythic forces, there's the whatever. I think that's part of conversing is we don't know. We don't have one replacement word, but I like to play. I do like replacing wrestle with dance, right? I'm very fond of that.
So I want to turn to Rachel again, and then we're going to invite you all now to start putting your questions in the chat so that we can draw on those as well as continuing our conversation. Rachel, this question, which I've explored with you, the inner planets, the outer planets, how astrology works. You've heard Caroline's take on that, which is so beautiful. What would you add to that?
Here, I want to piggyback on Caroline. And so two things. First of all, Pluto was the keeper of gems. So he's our friend in that he's like, I've got all the goods down here. You have to come into the underworld to get all the goods. So that's, I think that's what we're doing right now, just definitely in this country, but also just Pluto's promise. Like we'll break down those identities and show you what's real, what's true, what's the gold nugget underneath it all. And so that kind of takes me to my perception of archetypes and of astrology. And this actually came to me in a vision that actually the chart, if you can look at your natal chart, or you can look at the chart for anything, as being the framework through which our soul incarnates. So our soul comes through this complex intersection web of planets in relationship with one another, planets in relationship with the Earth, the luminary. Actually, I even look at deep space objects, black holes, comets, quasars. I even kind of, I'm sort of trying to figure out an intergalactic astrology right now. So our soul is the oneness, is the infinite possibility. And our soul comes in through all of these different planetary configurations that we could call archetypes, but the archetypes themselves are the way that the ego structures a sense of self, individuated self, in relation to the world that we live in relation to the relationships that we have. And so I think there's value in understanding that individuated self with the perspective that we're always both the individuated self and the self returning to the whole. We're always walking the balance between those two things. And so that's kind of how I see archetypes. That our archetypes are like our Mercury is part of the ego construct. And how the ego gets developed is through the story of Saturn and Jupiter, the ways that our family and culture translate evolutionary cycles to us in our personal lives, and those outer planets being those evolutionary cycles that we're connected to and that we're a part of. So that's really how how I see this, see those relationships.
That's wonderful. Alice Love just asked a question, which I'd pose to Rachel first, because you and I have talked about how young people are flocking to astrology and also Enneagram, by the way, which is another great interest of mine. But Alice says, do you see commonalities between young people's charts? I feel that. I feel that people in their teens, 20s, and 30s right now are powerful. Wow. Rachel, what are you getting about what's happening with young people in astrology?
Yeah, so a lot of those people who are just turning 30 or in their late 20s, early 30s, they were born when Pluto was in Scorpio. And so they were born with this natural desire and inclination toward understanding truth that their parents weren't talking about, that my generation wasn't talking about. And so we see a lot of the people who came of age right around the time when Neptune entered Pisces in 2012. Every time Neptune enters Pisces, which is a 165-year cycle, we see a return to magic. And we see occult revivals. And there are the birth of spiritual movements and cults, too, like Carolyn alluded to. And so we had these Pluto and Scorpio young people coming of age at a time when Neptune was opening our hearts and opening our minds to really open us up to experiencing more compassion, more of that sense of oneness. And so we can really thank that generation for bringing social media into things, and the way technology works now. It's so easy to do a birth chart, whereas when I first started, we were doing it by hand, and if you're not good at math, it would take a really long time. And so it's so accessible. You can open your phone and pull up someone's birth chart in a second. And so I think that there's been a lot of shift. And I like to think that the cooperating forces, the forces of magic, have a hand in this too. Because if by opening our understanding of astrology, we are inherently entering into a deeper relationship with the earth and with the forces of nature, because there's no way that you can know astrology and not feel a part of it and not feel connected to the whole, to the planet that we live in. And so I personally think that it's a combination of, our ancestors, our guides, the spiritual forces awakening within us, the shift that's bringing the next generation into more of a right relationship with the planet and with the cosmos.
We have some wonderful questions that I'll turn to Caroline for first, and then Rachel, please add your thoughts. Another question from before, from Halima, I think. Rachel, exactly where are we evolving to unpack the misogynist, paternalist interpretations in astrology, e.g., Capricorn is a feminist earth sign, not the paternal father destructive figure that has been layered on her by misogynists. And Pluto has been in Capricorn to transform us all. These are benevolent changes. So that's one. And then another from Nasus. Any insight into the prospect of cash being phased out as the apparent imminent breakdown of the current economic system? Those
are two huge questions, Michael. We're gonna hand the Nasus one to Rachel.
Okay, I'll take that one.
But not yet. But not yet, because Halima's got Moon and Capricorn. I know from backstage conversing.
Does Neptune and Capricorn also affect this influx of intuitive pursuits and increased spiritual interest? So I'll stop there. Just wanted to fill the plate.
Right. So this wonderful language, right? We are detectives, right? So it gives us a form. Some people might have said an archetype. Okay, but so here we are. With the Moon in Capricorn, it used to be called in its fall or detriment, right? And I use exaltations. I love those, right? Jupiter exalted in Cancer because people need stories more than they need food. I love that more than they need bread. But I like Daniel Gemario saying the earliest image for Capricorn was the Council of Grandmothers. right? Dedicated to the, and then it comes into this kind of thing. But yeah, no. So we're here to redeem that, and as Halima sort of says, we have a moon Pluto, so we're all honorary grandmothers, kind of gathering now, the Pluto in Capricorn, death, rebirth. So the moon Pluto says, well, what are some feminine or lunar images, right? So I like, one way I play is that all mythic figures are animations of intrinsic intelligence in nature. So Pluto and Moon, the wrathful Dakinis, represent that in nature which metabolizes poison. And just as a little sidebar, all the planets chime in and go, you humans here will help you out. If you don't know what to do, invite in what does. That'll do. That'll do. And wonder about it. I wonder what we need now. Oh, because this language also is just rehabilitating us to be intimate with the world by being able to read it symbolically, right? And also to navigate by augury, to ask a question. And when Michael, you were referring to Mercury, and something that made me think of, different cultures' relationship in Greece, in ancient Greece. Silence was comfortable because the next voice to speak would be Hermes, right? Mm-hmm. So we wonder what words to use. Oh, and then they come in. But then just a little to introduce the wrathful Dakinis, for those of you who have not heard about them, they've heard about you, because they represent that in nature which metabolizes poison. And they were originally depicted as part woman, part animal. And then Tibetan Buddhism tamed them down, as any orthodoxy will, and made them pretty and ornamental. But they're not pretty. They're beautiful. They're like, and they represent metabolized poison. So they take the poison of anger and cook it into the tonic of wrath, fierce protection of the community. All life, right? They take the poison of seduction and cook it into magnetism, bring everything alive, right? So that's also part of the Pluto dynamic, what metabolizes poison. And we also say, when did humans make the underworld a bad place? We go, well, we have to go back pretty far to right when there was a priesthood, right? Priesthoods run on fear and outsourced Saturn, right? Before that, it was a deep place, and but a place of where our souls speak more deeply to us. And it was astrologer, Greek scholar. His name will come back to me, but he said, the prefix dis, D-I-S, D-Y-S, means underworld. So any dis takes us to the underworld where our souls can speak more deeply to us, so that no one could say, this is your destiny, but one might come in contact with, to dree our weird, to play our role, right? So, and now Rachel can handle the cryptocurrency conversation.
Well, thank you. Okay, so I know that a lot of people look at some of the astrology of Pluto and Capricorn, and Pluto entered Capricorn in 2008. Right at the time of the crash and the mortgage crisis. And really, wherever Pluto's transiting, it breaks down what's not working. It allows us to go into the cracks of those systems, take out the decay, and fill it in with something more desirable. So to heal it in a way that's transformed. And that's really what's happening with our financial systems globally. Right around that time was when cryptocurrency started, when blockchain technology began as an attempt to balance out some of the income inequality and some of the ways in which corporations were, the unfair lending practices, et cetera. So Pluto's in its last few degrees of Capricorn right now. So there will be shifts and changes that finish what we didn't finish with the 99% movement. Now, does that mean that cash is going to be phased out, that we're going to have a breakdown of the economic structure? I think any aspect of the economic structure that is toxic, that, like Carolyn's saying, that is poison, let's hope that there is a breakdown of that, and let's hope there is a renewal of something that is that rises up from the ashes of that breakdown. There are going to be a lot of shifts that take place, though, throughout your transiting Uranus, still in its last few degrees of Taurus. So really, between now and 2026, expect some changes. But I don't think we have to get fearful or fatalistic about it. I think we can all hold the vision, or hold the possibility, hold space for the possibility that any change that's going to be taking place is going to move us into more of an Aquarian paradigm, where we are, where we're investing in our communities, where we're helping one another out, peer-to-peer lending. Like, we're going to see a lot of those kinds of changes, and more communal-based financial systems.
Both of you are really unusual in astrology in bringing your political visions into astrological work. That, at least in my experience, is very rare. And it's so fascinating because whatever language we use, this is a period of very profound transformation. So in our work on the polycrisis, which people can find at omega.ngo, when we're looking at all the environmental, social, technological, financial, economic forces that are interacting ever more rapidly and causing future shocks of ever greater power, the climate crisis, and then COVID, and then the Ukraine war, and then the supply chain gaps and inflation running at 9%. And so there's this immense confluence of things going on. And there is a deep hunger among many people to try to understand what's happening. So it seems to me that what both archetypal psychology and astrology offer is a mythic language in which one at least considers the living intelligences that appear to us in mythic or astrological form. And to me, that's very creative, because it gives us a language outside of normal political discourse that gives us kind of a third place from which to look at this. So Caroline, coming back to you, really you've been doing this your entire career. What have you, for want of a better word, discovered about how using this language enables a different kind of conversation across political boundaries that brings fun and play and dance and all kinds of things into it, that really transforms the lugubrious tone with which this is usually considered?
Well, vast questions that made this conversation keep going, and everybody for on out. So for me, bringing it back into an animistic metaphor realm, when I had a economist on radio years ago, and he just pointed out that all of our metaphors for money are all water, right? Currency, cash flow, liquidity, rising tide, right? And so I go, it's a Neptune thing. And Neptune's been correlated with the Kondratyov economic cycle that's above my pay grade over there. But in terms of the generation, so Neptune is in Leo, right, in the 1920s, roaring 20s, right? Enters Virgo, in October of 1929, party's over, right? Then, and then we keep going. So now Neptune in Pisces is we're all in one giant dream. And when the economist, and it does whisper to us, I mean, we all know things about the Inquisition in many ways, and we want to call the Inquisition off, but Neptune, whispers to us in Pisces and says to each person, imagine that the deepest, most soulful part of you is about to be completely welcome in group mind, just to entertain that as a kind of Inquisition over. Still terrible things, but safer for everybody to come out as their wizard self, as their whatever self, that dynamic. And with The Economist, I said, oh, okay, money as water. I can work with this. This is good news for mystics. So let's work with it more. And he goes, right. So pipelines move through inner city communities, sucking water out through outside ownership and stadiums and stuff. So we want to poke holes in it, right? Yeah, and this is what in your city council, and water's a big issue in Ojai and everywhere, right? And so that it spirals. All water moves in a spiral, right? That's its nature. And so even the German scientists last year, when there were floods, were like, it might have been a mistake to force undulating, curvy water into straight, shallow concrete prisons. They go, you think, right? Anyway, so that's the whole realm of biomimicry and the economy, biomimicry, economy, so that the water flows and irrigates, slowly through a community and supports, small businesses and ingenuity and, and the return of beavers that make the land fireproof and, we need everybody, right? So there you have that.
Let me add one thing here about how I am holding astrology these days. Since I began my inquiry, which with Rachel, is the poet Keats talked about negative capability, which is the ability to hold divergent ideas in your mind without stress. And so when I talk about an astrology for non-believers, I mean that through this inquiry, looking particularly at the inner planets, that I can really understand the incredible power of an intrapsychic astrology. It just lights up your brain and gives you a form of access to all kinds of inner forces that you might not otherwise individuate into. That said, there are what Rick Tarnas points out in Psyche and Cosmos, the parallels in history and in biography, and the everyday experiences that many of us have, that our sun signs make sense to us, that there seem to be real correlations with our transits in our lives where our planets are. And it seems uncanny that this is purely the result of completely intrapsychic forces. It seems as if there is an internal reality at play, as Caroline said, synchronicity. But I find it's important for me, and Rick Tarnas actually said that James Hillman always maintained his own skepticism. I find it's important for me to retain a critical eye about astrology, to say, I really don't know how this works. I know how it works as an intrapsychic set of events, but I can't understand what Tarnas finds in Cosmos and Psyche. I can't understand all of the correlations to the real world in our lives and in history that so many people have pointed to. So I just want to say, as you listen to this, I haven't given up my skepticism, but I don't have difficulty holding that skepticism along with a deep sense of wonder that, as Carl Jung said, the damn thing works even after death. That's a quote from Jung about astrology. The damn thing works even after death. And so the fact that it seems to work is what is uncanny, because it goes beyond holding it as a completely intrapsychic system of self-understanding. So Caroline, I'll go to you first with that. We're headed into the last 10 or 12 minutes. How do you respond to those thoughts?
Well, I like Steve Bierman saying, sure, it works in practice, but does it work in theory? No, because it's an adventure. It's like when I went to Syria. People in Syria knew I'd gone through a lot to get there. So it's like overcoming conditioning. So we jump in and go, let's see if it does. And I think it's a wonderful healthy thing. I mean, every now and then, every other day, I go, what if it's all a complex crock? Let me throw astrology into the cauldron. I think that's useful. And everything by which we define ourselves. And then there are those wonderful moments where you go, that was amazing. There's no other way that could have been this could not be someone else. How wonderful. But I think it's very healthy to throw things in, so there is no dogma. And that's why, we're all heretics here, right? So, because heretic was a term of praise in early religion. Boy, that Michael Lerner, that Rachel Lang, that, Jane Shabatari, that, sure is a great heretic because it meant free thinking, cross-pollinating, contributor to culture so that knowledge never became dogma, right? So the liberating thing never became a prison.
I love it that you hold it that way, that you, with this whole incredible history that you have, that you're able to say, maybe the whole thing's a
complex crock. Well, yeah, no, it's healthy. But what if Commonweal is a crock? Throw that in. What if running for council is a crock? It's a useful thing to do. Pluto likes that, right? and then you ladle it out, and it's fresh, cleansed of any conditioned identity or need. And so I think that's fun. And the wrathful dakinis are happy to. Certainty is a booby prize, but you did say the magic word, because you were sort of anguishing about these complex things in your mind, and I go, well, part of what's available to us is wonder, and you said it. Wonder attracts revelation, right? Neptune and Uranus. I wonder what and that is a restoration of our intimate participation. Like, I wonder which road to take. Oh, that's the one with the energy. I wonder. Neptune says, look, the humans have run out of certainty. It was always a booby prize anyway, but now there really is no certainty. A round of applause from the ancestors. The humans have run out of certainty. Now they are available to mystery. We wonder what to do. We wonder how to resolve this thing. We wonder. And then I just want to bring in Zelensky's Jupiter at 27 Gemini, just for the fun of it. Pluto right now at 27 Capricorn. A great contribution. Years ago, Jim Lewis said to me, look at Pluto and Jupiter, incredible for publicity. And I was like, well, that's kind of cheesy. I don't know. Oh, it's true. But I had to work it out. Jupiter storytelling, Pluto death, rebirth, its image is the phoenix. And so then excavating, before the phoenix bursts into flames and is reborn, the phoenix sings this hauntingly beautiful song. And all of creation stops what they're doing and is reminded of what's really important, participatory animism and mutual aid and symbiosis, right? And then the phoenix bursts into flames. So I go, oh, we could say it got a lot of publicity. All of creation listened to its song. So Zelensky's really kind of doing that, Pluto exactly to his Jupiter. You play the story, then you live the story, right? And then to everybody here who's receptive, we wonder what each one of us, our phoenix's song might be. If we have the capacity with everybody, no one person, no celebrity, to guide, and then Pluto just says to everybody, we've all been gathering things in our arduous journeying of what gets us through the underworld. And then just to pass it back to Rachel, a wonderful friend gave me this way to spiral out of polarity, which is, because, going on, and she goes, people never mind being asked, did you know? Unless we ask it in a snarky way. Did you know the Iraqis were slant drilling oil into Kuwait, or Kuwaitis were, whatever. Did you know? And then the more we know, and everybody here is a fountain of knowledge about ingenious solutions. Did you know about this? And that's where biomimicry is so great, because it transcends politics. People go, that's so beautiful. The rewiring of the Japanese train to look like a kingfisher bird entering water. Did you know we could do this? Did you know? No, I didn't. And anyway, so that's part of our magic backpack we can take away.
Rachel, what do you think?
Okay, I want to add to that backpack, and that is that magic is really alive in this trio here. And this painting right here, the red one, Tuesday night, last night, I I had this like, I had to finish it. I had to finish it. It was not finished. I had to finish it. And I had to finish it and put it up today. And it's the Phoenix. It's the Phoenix rising out of the ashes. And so, I think that this is an example of, there, and also if I can just add one other little story, this is my How I Discovered Caroline story. I was working at a nonprofit and I was at a business meeting and I wanted to be an astrologer. I loved astrology so much, but I couldn't figure out how I could be in astrology and make a difference in the world, because I had like this passion. I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to, be a documentary filmmaker and do all this amazing. And I was like, I can't be an astrologer, because the only template I had for astrologers were like, the horoscope column in the newspaper and, Susan Miller's column on the website. Anyway, I didn't have a real template for how to merge these two things. So I'm at a business lunch and I overhear 2 tables next to me. I have this crazy supersonic hearing. 2 tables down from me, I hear a woman say, "Oh yeah, that's the North Node, it's the Dragon's Head." And I was like, I lived in Nashville. I only knew one other astrologer. So it's like the Dragon's Head, what's happening over here? So I'm halfway in my meeting and then I'm halfway in the other table, 2 tables down. And she says, "Yeah, you should listen to her, Caroline Casey at the Visionary Activist Visionary Activist, huh? Okay, it's a KPFK." So I went home and Googled, and this is like 2005, 2006, I can't remember. And I heard you for the first time. And I thought, oh my gosh, here's a template for how to bring this passion I have for social justice, for all the things that I'm doing, and astrology. And that's how magic works. It's how astrology works. It's like we don't, if we understood how it all worked, we wouldn't be in awe and really experience the beauty of the mystery of how these synchronicities can take place that take us from one point in our lives to a whole nother point. And I feel like this is the way that the divine participates with us. This is the way the divine plays with us, is by showing us these kinds of signs in our everyday life, by showing up to play with us so that we are guided and directed in a meandering way like water, then that the slow flow of water, or sometimes the big rush of water. And so that's something that I think, for me, astrology and magic have always gone hand in hand. And I think this is just one of those examples of our coming together is one of those examples of magical forces at play.
Rachel, thank you so much. And we're going to wrap up here now. First of all, there are some fabulous last-minute questions that we can't address, but just here's a wonderful one from Andres in Guatemala. Rachel, you mentioned intergalactic astrology. For those of us who believe Gaia is the living planet Earth, it would be fascinating to ponder about Gaia's birth chart. If you don't have time to comment about this, hopefully at some point in the future you can reflect on this. Muchas gracias from Guatemala. And I just think that's a lovely conversation to save for the future. And then Halima Christie says, as a Jungian psychologist turned transpersonal, I find the multivalent systems of inner-outers seem to be intuitively share the good of consciousness, cause and effect enlightenings. I just want to thank you both so much. This has been, Caroline, the way you invited us into deep conversation, and Caroline, just how much you've done for consciousness and our community, and for really softening and opening us to conversations with people who are different from us, And Rachel, such a joy to partner with you in this whole set of conversations. And to continue to learn with each other and from each other. So I want to assure you all, some of you have asked, we will capture the conversations in the chat. We will make them available to you all. And it's been just a beautiful time. So Caroline, any last word or two?
3. Just it was a long time ago that leading edge physics said there's meaning in patterns. We go, excellent. The argument's over, right?
Yeah.
Between physics and metaphysics. And then physics and metaphysics can get married and have a child, reverence science as though life mattered. That would be really good. And then just as a kind of Act 5 kind of go forth, just the wonderful word complicity. Not shame, not blame, but whatever's going on, we are complicitously creative. And once we realize that, if it's undesirable, we can inhale our creative complicity and exhale it into a better story. So complicity, we're all dreaming this thing into play. There we go. And concentrating on the desirable. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah. Fabulous. Rachel, any last words?
This is just thank you. And I think the complicity is a good note to end on.
Perfect. And so Kira Epstein, back to you.
Great. Thank you. What an amazing and fun conversation. Again, we'll have the recordings produced in about a week. And if you're on our New School mailing list, or if you follow any of our feeds, you'll be notified when the recordings are posted, and we will include the chat. Please consider making a donation to help keep these programs coming. I put the link in the chat a little bit ago. And I think that's it. Carolyn Casey, Rachel Lang, and Michael Lerner, thanks for being with us at the New School at Commonweal. See you next time.
What a joy, friends. Thanks to all of you for coming online with us, and come back. We're going to continue these astrological explorations and take a look at all the other stuff we're doing. It's a lot of fun. Take care. Till next time.
Don't take it, 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 don't take it,
The river is a healer, the river is a sage, the river knows